There comes a moment in every woman's life when something in her breaks quietly, not out of weakness, but because her soul can no longer carry what was never hers to hold. The mask cracks, the mirror shifts, and something old begins to die. This is that moment. This is that death. This is what it sounds like when death becomes her. Let me ask you something real. What if the hardest part of healing wasn't letting go of the relationship, but grieving who you had to become to survive it? What if the death wasn't of them, but the version of you who kept shrinking just to be tolerated? You didn't stay because you were blind. You stayed because the pain felt like home, because endurance felt holy, because no one ever taught you that love shouldn't hurt. But now you know, and knowing means something has to end. This is Empowered Shadows. I'm your host, Shayla, and tonight we begin with the sacred work of laying her to rest. Laying her to rest so you can finally meet the woman she was always protecting underneath. Because this time, the grief isn't your undoing. It's your becoming. The knowing beneath the silence. Sometimes, knowing doesn't come as a full sentence. It comes as a flinch, as a tightness in your chest, as a breath you hold when they walk into the room. You didn't always know, but your body did. Your body knew how to brace. Your body knew how to freeze. It knew how to fake being fine so you wouldn't be punished for speaking the truth too soon. You weren't naive. You were responding the only way you knew how, through instinct, through hope, through inherited patterns that were passed down like protection. You were waiting for proof because evidence felt safer than your own intuition. And now you're learning to trust your knowing the first time. Why you stayed and why it wasn't your fault. You stayed because you loved, because you needed, because something in you still believed you could earn safety if you just did it more, if you just did it right. You weren't asking to be hurt. You were asking to be held. You were asking to be chosen without needing to shrink, to be heard without having to scream, to be seen without filtering your fire. But you weren't given love. You were given conditions. And your nervous system translated those conditions into normal. There's no shame in that. That's the map you were handed. And now you're burning it. Responsibility isn't shame. It's the gate to your power. Let's slow this down because this is where most people turn away. Taking responsibility isn't about blaming yourself for staying. It's about realizing where you are now and how you have the power to respond differently. It's not saying, I should have known better. It's saying, now I do know, and I won't keep betraying myself the same way. You're not bad for being unaware. You were surviving. You were repeating what was modeled. You were obeying an emotional blueprint you didn't realize was borrowed. But awareness is a sacred threshold. And now that you've crossed it, you can't unsee what your soul has finally named. Responsibility means taking your power out of the hands of those who harmed you and placing it back into your own. Not because you caused the harm, but because you refuse to keep recreating it. This is how we become cycle breakers. This is how we become women who choose themselves loudly, clearly, consistently. This is how we stop calling red flags potential and start calling them proof. This part is hard, but it's holy. Because shame says, I was wrong to trust. But responsibility says, now I trust myself enough to never go silent again. What you allow, you repeat. You can't awaken and keep living like you're asleep. You've seen too much. You've felt too much. Survived too much. Survive too much to keep calling pain a personality trait or dysfunction just how it is. Parts of you still want to soften the truth, to rationalize the red flags, to dress the past in nostalgia and convince yourself you're being too harsh. You're not. You're being honest for the first time in a long time. And here's the truth. What you allow, you will repeat. Not because you're weak, not because you're broken. It is because your nervous system is still trying to make the familiar feel safe. Parts of you are still negotiating with old blueprints. Parts of you are still trying to love people who only knew how to use your silence as currency. But awareness requires action. And peace requires boundaries, not bargains. You can't choose yourself and cling to what cost you. You can't move forward and keep watering what you've already outgrown. The version of you that allowed it, she was survival. But you're not surviving anymore. You're remembering. You're rising. And it's time. It is now time to choose differently. Not just in thought, but in practice. When death becomes her, there's a moment after the unraveling, after the silence, where you realize the old version of you is gone. Not disappeared, dissolved. She faded each time you said no. Each time you chose to disappoint others instead of abandoning yourself. Each time you left the room you used to beg to be accepted in. And what's left now is space. Not emptiness, but room. Room for the real you to step forward. The version of you who isn't shaped by pain, who isn't waiting to be chosen, who doesn't trade truth for connection. And here's the sacred truth. When death becomes her, what dies is not the soul, but the performance. What dies is the obedience, the pretending, the need to prove your worth through endurance. And in its place, she rises. The self that always lived beneath the layers, she rises. The one you were before you were taught to shrink. The one you're meeting now, maybe for the first time, without apology, without armor, she rises. She's not just returning, she's arriving. And she's not asking for permission. She's gone now. The one who smiled through red flags, who called the ache home, who wore silence like safety and mistook endurance for devotion. You didn't just let her go. You mourned her. You faced her. You laid her to rest with your own two hands. And now you are standing in the aftermath, where grief and clarity hold hands, where the echo of who you used to be is still fading behind you. But look at what's here now, the quiet. It's not emptiness, it's space. Space for truth, space for power, space for her. The version of you who doesn't wait to be chosen, who doesn't soften to stay safe, who doesn't fear her own reflection anymore. This isn't a glow up. This isn't performance. This is integration. This is the moment your healing stops being etheric and starts being a truth you live in, breathe in, become. You're not going back. You're not performing peace. You're not trying to be enough. You are already, now, and fully. This is Empowered Shadows. And this is what it means when death becomes her. Not her end, but her emergence. The woman you buried is the foundation you rise from. And the one rising now, she's not surviving. She's sovereign. Thank you for listening.